In the ever-changing world that is football, there is a status quo constantly in flux, and whilst the big teams of today may feel like they're going to be big forever, giants and empires, they always fall. Today, we're taking a look at 5 of the best fallen giant clubs to manage in FM21. So yes, today we are going to be looking at 5 of the biggest clubs, or former biggest clubs I suppose technically, from all around the world of football that have crumbled. Teams that need rescuing, teams that can be really fun saves in Football Manager. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If it's the first one you're finding here on the channel, make sure to check out the rest of our top 5s, just like this one, linked to the top of the description. If you go on to enjoy this video, of course, like the video. And well, without further ado, let's get into this. So in at number 5, we've got FC Kaiserslautern. I'm definitely not saying that correctly. These are one of the big dogs of German football. You can see here a trophy cabinet that actually has trophies in it. And if you're a younger viewer, you're probably sat there thinking, well, they've won Bundesliga. It's probably like 100 years ago. No, just over 2 decades ago, they were competing at the top level. They won the Bundesliga in 1998. You can see they finished runner-up in the 90s as well. Perhaps had their most successful spell during the 50s. But in recent years, things have really not gone to plan. They've slowly, well, fallen down the league table. After 120 years of being in existence, they find themselves in the German 3rd tier, predicted to finish 4th first season, so some pretty hefty expectations on your shoulder. You can see here the board want you to finish in the top half and then reach the playoffs the year after. They want you to develop players using the club's youth system. You're not going to have a whole lot of money. Well, okay. You have a little bit of wage, not a whole lot. There's no transfer budget, so it's going to be a tough first season. But ultimately, they are one of the kind of big dogs of German football that have kind of fallen out of relevancy. You can see they had a brief stint back in the Bundesliga where they actually finished 7th during the 2010-11 season. But since then, it's not really gone to plan. They've had 2 relegations in the last decade, 2 years now in the 3rd tier. Are you going to be the man to turn around their fortunes, return them to the big time? That is your challenge. In at number 4, we've got Vitória Football Club playing in the Portuguese Championship, Group H. Yes, a team that, when you think of Fallen Giant, this might be the one that in this video stretches it the most. But make no mistake, 110 years after their founding, Vitória Football Club have not been in a situation as dire as the one they find themselves in right now. Financially in ruin, they were rejected from re-entry into the Portuguese Football League system and demoted down 2 leagues just last year. They are in a bit of a pickle. And well, you might think, how far have they fallen? And if I was to only show you the trophy cabinet, you might be a little underwhelmed. 3 Taça de Portugals, which is the kind of Portuguese domestic cup. Make no mistake though, they won one of these in 2005, so not a lifetime ago. And if we look at their competition history, they are a team that during the 70s really did challenge at the top of Portuguese football. In terms of the club themselves, if we just look at the vision here, you can see expected to get promotion in your first season. The expectations are going to be high. And, well, whilst the wage budget exists, do expect it to shrink over a few years if buyouts and a takeover don't come into fruition. This is a team on the rocks. Can you steady the ship? Can you get them back to the big time? Can you even take them one step further than they've ever been before and win that elusive first Liga NOS title? That is the goal. Good luck. The next team in this countdown sees us stray away from Europe to Club Atlético Independiente, who play in Argentina, a team who still play in the top flights, whilst, you know, they've not fallen particularly far down the ladder. Considering their legacy, considering their past successes, it's hard to ignore anything but their recent performances in the league as a disappointment. A team that has the most Copa Libertadores wins in its history. And well, at 7, no team comes close. If we look at their history in the Argentine league, they dominated it during the 70s, won it occasionally in the 80s, but since then, it's been over 30 years waiting. A club who have so much success, and after a really bitterly disappointing campaign in 2019-20 that saw them finish 14th, they are looking to bounce back and looking to get back on the up. Expectation is high. You can see here in the Copa Sudamericana, which they did win but a few years ago, they're expected to go far, but the long-term ambitions qualify for the Copa Libertadores, get back to the big time, add to the 7 that have already been won, sign high reputation players, develop young players using the club's youth system. Just looking at their team here, it's a really, really good squad for this level, but there's maybe a lack of a young generation coming through, and maybe that is where the focus needs to shift for longer term success. If you've never managed in South America before, Argentina is a very fun league to venture into. I recommend this team highly. Not exactly the most long term of saves, but if you're looking for a short term challenge in a nation you might not be quite so familiar with, this might just be the one for you. In at number 2, we have previous Europa League runners-up, Dnipro. Don't exist. But they finished runner-up in 2015. Well, what do you mean? Okay, so this one is a little bit of a curveball. You could debatably say they're not a fallen giant because it's a different club. But Dnipro, who finished runner-up in the Europa League just 5 years ago, ceased to exist, but in their place a Phoenix club sprouted, which over the past 3 years has been climbing the Ukrainian ladder. Many of the players who play at this club are long-term servants of the original Dnipro club, and whilst it is technically another team, it is a team that very much has its roots in the Dnipro of old, a team who really made a splash on the European stage. Just looking at their pre-season billing, a mid-table finish in the Ukraine, of course, the likes of Dynamo Kiev and Shakhtar Donetsk, the obvious teams to try and topple short term. The Ukraine is a nation dominated by a few clubs, and whilst Dnipro were able to upset the apple cart for a few years, it was not sustainable. Your shorter term aims at Dnipro are going to be to establish yourself as the best of the rest. Bring up some youth, develop them well, not a lot of money to spend in the first few years. Ultimately, this is going to be a save game about building a more sustainable club that doesn't require some illegitimate finances that just can't be maintained to challenge at the top of Europe. Can you reinstate the Dnipro legacy? Can you take this team back to where they belong? They've managed to climb to the Ukrainian top flights, and whilst the original Dnipro team was never able to win the Ukrainian top flight, maybe that is something that is within reach, and with your leadership, can be achieved. Finally, in at number 1, a team that really shouldn't come as much of a surprise, Deportivo La Coruña, a team that 20 years ago were the champions of Spanish football, and in the years that followed became a mainstay of European football. It would be safe to say those days are long gone now, and over the last 20 years, things have looked grim. A number of promotions back to the La Liga 2 seem like a pretty disappointing campaign, but that pales in comparison to recent seasons. 2 relegations in the last 3 years now sees Deportivo La Coruña play in the 3rd tier of Spanish football. A club that are far too big to fail, a club that have far too much money to be languishing down at this level. Over £10 million in the bank, a huge wage budget, but that is going to need to be resolved quickly because financially you are going to bleed money fast. If we look at the club vision, work towards repairing the club's financial damage, get promoted first season, the bare minimum aims. Longer term, getting back to the La Liga 2 playoff spots. Realistically, within 5 years, the board are going to want you to be playing back in La Liga, playing back at the top level of Spanish football. And as with all saves in Spain, the big challenge, the big bad at the end of it all is to dethrone the trio that are Real Madrid, Barcelona and Atletico Madrid. If any team can do it, Deportivo are a team that know how. They've done it once before. A team with a huge stadium for the level that they play at. Fans who are going to back them to the end. Can you reinstate their legacy, take them back to the top of Spanish football, and ultimately secure them the La Liga title once more? Anyway, guys, that does wrap up this video from me. I do hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you did, a like is always appreciated. If you've got to the end of this video and the subscribe button, down in the bottom corner is still red, click it. It changes colour. It's magical. And you also get notified when we upload more videos, which of course you're going to want to see. Anyway, that is all from me. More of these coming in very, very hot. Keep your eye open for them. And until next time, it is me, Jack, and I will talk to you guys in a bit. I'm out.